am Allie, 28 years old, a single mom trying to finish my accounting degree while raising my 4-year-old son, Noah. My parents live just 15 minutes away, retired with plenty of free time. When I desperately needed them to watch Noah for just 1 hour during my final exam, they refused. Their reason? They had a golf game scheduled. How could they choose golf over something that would impact my entire future? Let me tell you what happened. If you are watching, let me know where you are from in the comments, and please hit that like and subscribe button to support single parents like me, fighting against all odds. Life as a single parent pursuing a college degree is not for the faint of heart. Every day is a carefully orchestrated dance of responsibilities and time management. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, not because I want to, but because I have to. Those early morning hours are precious for reviewing notes before Noah wakes up at 7. Our small 2-bedroom apartment is all we can afford on my part-time barista salary at downtown Brews. The walls are thin, the furniture is second-hand, but I have done my best to make it a home for Noah. His room is painted a cheerful blue with cloud stickers on the ceiling, a little sanctuary I created during one sleepless weekend when I should have been studying for midterms. Noah is an energetic 4-year-old with curious blue eyes and a smile that lights up even my darkest days. He has my blonde hair, but his facial expressions remind me so much of his father Jacob. Not that Jacob would know this. He disappeared shortly after I told him I was pregnant, claiming he was not ready for that kind of responsibility. His last words to me were, "This is your choice, not mine," as if I had somehow created this child all by myself. My parents, Amanda and Robert Wilson, live in a spacious 4-bedroom house in a gated community just 15 minutes from our apartment. They retired early from their respective careers in finance and real estate, living comfortably off their investments and retirement funds. Their calendar is filled with golf games, book clubs, and weekend getaways to their lake house. They rarely make time for Noah and me. When I first told them about my pregnancy, their disappointment was palpable. My mother cried, not tears of joy, but of shame. My father paced the living room, asking how I could have been so irresponsible. They had always envisioned a different life for me, one that included marriage to a successful man first, then children. The fact that I was 23 in college and now pregnant with no partner in sight was in their eyes a catastrophic deviation from the plan. "What about your degree?" my mother had asked, as if the baby growing inside me had instantly erased all my academic potential. "You know we will not be raising this child for you," my father had added firmly. Their reaction hurt, but it did not surprise me. Throughout my childhood, my parents had always been physically present, but emotionally distant. They provided well materially. I never wanted for clothes, or school supplies, or extracurricular activities. But the warmth, the unconditional support that I saw in other families, that was missing from our home. Despite their initial reaction, I had hoped that the birth of their grandson might soften their hearts. When Noah was born, they did come to the hospital bringing an expensive baby outfit and a check to help with expenses. They cooed over him, appropriately took the requisite photos for their social media, and then left after an hour claiming they had dinner reservations they could not miss. Over the past 4 years, their relationship with Noah has remained superficial at best. They remember his birthday with expensive gifts, but rarely spend time with him. When I bring him to their house, they seem uncomfortable moving fragile objects out of reach and checking their watches frequently. My mother has never once offered to babysit so I could study or simply rest. My father addresses Noah with the awkward formality of someone who has read about children in books but never actually interacted with one. Meanwhile, my days are a blur of activity. After getting Noah ready for the day, I drop him off at Happy Horizons daycare by 8, then rush to campus for my morning classes. Between classes, I work my barista shift, then pick up Noah by 5, make dinner, give him a bath, read stories, and put him to bed by 8. Only then can I start on my own homework, often studying until 1 or 2 in the morning before collapsing into bed, only to repeat the cycle again a few hours later. Sleep deprivation has become my constant companion. Dark circles have taken permanent residence under my eyes, but quitting is not an option. I am in my final year of my accounting degree with a GPA that has somehow remained above 3.5 despite the challenges. The promise of a stable career of financial security for Noah and me keeps me going when exhaustion threatens to overwhelm me. My classmates cannot relate to my situation. Most of them complain about having to wake up for 9 a.m. classes or the workload of being a full-time student. They plan weekend parties and spring break trips, while I calculate how many extra shifts I need to cover an unexpected doctor visit for Noah or a new pair of shoes for his growing feet. The financial stress is constant. My student loans cover tuition and books, but everything else comes from my meager salary and the occasional child support check that Jacob sends when he remembers he has a son. I have become an expert at stretching dollars, at finding free activities for Noah, at ignoring my own wants to provide for his needs. Through it all, Noah remains my motivation, my reason for pushing through the exhaustion and stress. His innocent faith in me, his unquestioning belief that mommy can do anything, is both my greatest responsibility and my greatest inspiration. When I consider giving up, I remember his face and find the strength to keep going. One day, I will provide him with the stability and opportunities that I never had. One day, we will not have to count pennies or live in an apartment with walls so thin we can hear the neighbors sneeze. One day, my degree will translate into a career that allows me to give Noah the life he deserves. That is why the upcoming final exam in advanced financial accounting matters so much. It is not just another test. It is a stepping stone toward that better future I have promised my son. The final exam for advanced financial accounting was scheduled for next Thursday at 10 a.m. Professor Davis was known for his rigorous testing style, and this exam would determine 40% of our final grade. As one of the core courses in the accounting program, a good grade was not just important for my GPA, but essential for my future job prospects. I had been preparing for this exam for weeks, stealing moments between shifts at the coffee shop, after Noah went to bed, and during his weekend naps. My textbook was filled with color-coded sticky notes, my notebook crammed with practice problems and formulas. This was the kind of course that potential employers looked at specifically when reviewing transcripts. A strong performance could open doors to internships and job offers that would change our lives. The Monday before the exam, I was reviewing my notes during my lunch break at Downtown Brews when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson from Happy Horizons Daycare. My stomach immediately tightened, my first thought being that Noah was sick or hurt. "Ms. Wilson," she began, her voice apologetic. "I am calling to inform all parents that we will need to close the center this Thursday. The building inspector found an issue with our fire suppression system that requires immediate attention." My heart sank as the implications became clear. Thursday, 10 a.m., exactly when my final exam was scheduled. "I understand this is inconvenient," Mrs. Thompson continued, "but safety regulations leave us no choice. We hope to reopen on Friday." After thanking her for the notice, I sat at the small table, my coffee growing cold, as I frantically scrolled through my phone contacts. Who could watch Noah for just an hour while I took this exam? My first call was to Lisa, a fellow student, and the closest thing I had to a friend at university. She was sympathetic but had her own exam that morning. Next was my coworker Miguel, who would have helped but was scheduled for the morning shift. I worked my way down the short list of people in my life who might be able to help, each call ending in apology. With growing desperation, I realized I had exhausted all options except one, my parents. I had not asked them for childcare help since Noah was a baby. When their reluctance had been so obvious, it made me vow never to ask again. But this was different. This was an emergency, a single hour that would impact my entire academic career. I dialed my mother's number, rehearsing what to say as the phone rang. Be calm, be specific. Emphasize the importance without sounding melodramatic. Hello, Allie? My mother answered, her voice carrying that familiar note of polite distance. Hi, Mom, I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. How are you and Dad doing? We exchanged the usual pleasantries, her telling me about their recent weekend trip to a wine tasting event, me offering abbreviated updates about school and Noah. Then, taking a deep breath, I explained the situation with the daycare and my critical final exam. It would just be for an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most, I said, trying to keep the pleading out of my voice. Noah is very well behaved now. He can entertain himself with his books and toys. You would hardly know he is there. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity before my mother responded. Oh, Allie, she sighed as if I had asked her to donate a kidney. Thursday morning is not good for us. Your father and I have our golf league that day. But my exam is at 10, I pressed. You usually play golf in the afternoon, right? We are in the morning group this week, she explained, her tone suggesting this was an immovable fact of nature. And afterward, we have lunch with the Hendersons. We have had these plans for weeks. I bit back the response that threatened to escape, that surely a standing golf game could be rescheduled, that surely her daughter's education was more important than hitting a small ball across a manicured lawn. Instead, I took another approach. Mom, this exam is 40% of my grade. If I miss it, I might fail the course. If I fail the course, I might not graduate on time. Please, it is just 1 hour. Allie. My mother's voice had taken on that patronizing tone I knew too well. This is exactly what we talked about when you decided to keep the baby. Parenthood means sacrifice. Sometimes that means sacrificing opportunities. Your father and I cannot simply rearrange our lives every time you have a conflict. Every time, as if I had made a habit of asking for their help, as if this one request in years was an unbearable imposition. I understand that, I said, my voice growing tight. But this is not just any conflict. This is my future, Mom. This is Noah's future. Perhaps you should have thought about that before you got pregnant, she replied, the familiar refrain that never failed to cut deep. Swallowing my hurt and pride, I asked if I could speak to my father, hoping he might be more understanding. When my father came on the line, his response was no more helpful. Allie, your mother told me about your situation. I am sorry, but we have commitments on Thursday morning. Dad, this is really important. I tried again. It is just 1 hour. And golf is just a game, he replied. But commitments are commitments. We made these plans weeks ago. This is your responsibility as a parent, not ours. I am not asking you to take on my responsibility, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. I am asking for help during an emergency. That is what family does. Family also respects boundaries, he countered. We have been very clear about our boundaries when it comes to childcare. We love Noah, but we raised our child. We are not raising another. The conversation ended shortly after with vague suggestions that I should figure something out, and reminders that this is what being a parent is all about. I hung up my hands, shaking with a mixture of anger, hurt, and panic. I had one more day of classes, one more shift at the coffee shop, and no solution for what to do with Noah during the most important exam of my college career. The irony was painful here. I was doing everything in my power to create a better life for my son, and the very people who should be supporting that effort were the ones standing in my way. After the disappointing phone call with my parents, I decided to make one last attempt to change their minds. Perhaps, in person with Noah present, they would find it harder to refuse. The next afternoon, after my classes and before my evening shift at the coffee shop, I picked up Noah from daycare and drove to my parents' suburban home. Their house stood in stark contrast to our modest apartment. The two-story brick colonial with its manicured lawn and seasonal flower beds spoke of stability and prosperity. The three-car garage housed my father's prized BMW and my mother's barely used Mercedes SUV. A stone pathway lined with solar lights led to the front door, with its decorative wreath changed meticulously with each season. Noah bounced excitedly in his car seat as we pulled into the circular driveway. "Grandma and Grandpa's house," he exclaimed. Despite their emotional distance, the novelty of visiting their home with its spacious rooms and backyard swimming pool always thrilled him. "Yes, sweetie," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "We are going to say hello to Grandma and Grandpa." I helped Noah out of his car seat, straightened his little blue t-shirt, and ran a hand through his tousled blonde hair in a futile attempt to make it lie flat. Taking his small hand in mine, I approached the front door with a mixture of determination and dread. My mother answered after the second ring, surprise evident on her face. At 58, Amanda Wilson remained strikingly attractive. Her blonde hair, expertly colored and styled her slim figure, maintained through rigorous exercise and careful dieting. Today, she wore white linen pants and a coral blouse, casual yet impeccable, as though a photographer for a retirement lifestyle magazine might appear at any moment. "Allie, Noah," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We were not expecting you." "Grandma," Noah exclaimed, releasing my hand to wrap his arms around her legs in an enthusiastic hug. My mother patted his head awkwardly before gently disentangling herself. "Robert," she called over her shoulder, "Allie and Noah are here." She led us into the expansive living room with its cream-colored furniture and tasteful artwork. Nothing in the room suggested that children ever visited. There were no toys tucked away in corners, no photographs of grandchildren displayed prominently, no concessions to the reality that they had a 4-year-old grandson. My father emerged from his home office, reading glasses perched on his nose and a quizzical expression on his face. At 60, Robert Wilson remained handsome in that distinguished silver fox way that seemed unfair compared to how motherhood had aged me. He wore golf shirts and khakis like a uniform today's version in navy blue and tan. "What brings you by?" he asked, glancing at his watch in a gesture so subtle most people would miss it. I did not. "Noah wanted to see you both." I lied, not wanting to discuss the real reason in front of my son. "And I thought we could talk a bit more about Thursday." My father's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, while my mother busied herself straightening a throw pillow that Noah had disturbed. "Noah, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to his eye level, "why do not you show Grandpa the new dinosaur book you got from the library? I bet he would love to see which ones are your favorites." Delighted with this suggestion, Noah retrieved the book from my bag and approached my father, who reluctantly sat on the sofa and accepted the well-worn library book. With Noah momentarily occupied, I turned to my mother and spoke in a low voice. "Mom, I really need your help on Thursday. Just 1 hour. Professor Davis is strict about makeup exams. They are only allowed for medical emergencies with documentation. If I miss this test, I will fail the course." My mother sighed, crossing her arms. "Allie, we discussed this yesterday. We have plans." "Golf," I said flatly. "You have golf." "Yes, golf." she replied without apology. And lunch afterward with the Hendersons. Gerald is on the board of Riverdale Bank, and your father is discussing a potential consulting opportunity with him. So, a networking lunch is more important than my education. I could feel my temper rising and fought to keep my voice down. That is not fair, Allie, my mother countered. Your childcare issues are not suddenly our emergency. We have lives and commitments. From the sofa, I could see my father half listening to Noah's enthusiastic explanation of the difference between a triceratops and a stegosaurus. His attention was clearly divided, one ear tuned to our conversation. I am not asking you to raise my child, I said, frustration building. I am asking for 1 hour of help during an emergency that will directly impact our future. Our future, my mother repeated, arching one perfectly shaped eyebrow. Yes, our future. Mine and Noah's. Do you not care about that at all? At this, my father closed the dinosaur book and suggested Noah might like to look at the fish in the aquarium across the room. Once Noah was happily distracted by the colorful tropical fish, my father joined our conversation. Allie, he began in that reasonable tone that always preceded his least reasonable statements. We do care about your future. That is precisely why we are not stepping in to solve this problem for you. Part of success in life is learning to overcome obstacles independently. This is not a life lesson opportunity, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. This is a very specific circumstance where I need family support for 1 hour so I can complete my degree and provide better for Noah. My mother shook her head. We warned you how difficult it would be to finish school as a single parent. We told you to consider all your options when you found out you were pregnant. The implication hung in the air between us. They had suggested not so subtly that I terminate the pregnancy or give the baby up for adoption. The memory of that conversation still had the power to make me feel physically ill. I made my choice, I said firmly, glancing at Noah, who was now pressing his nose against the aquarium glass. He is the best choice I ever made, and I am doing everything I can to make a good life for him, including finishing my degree. And we respect that, my father said in a tone that suggested the opposite. But you cannot expect us to rearrange our lives every time you face a challenge. That is not how the real world works. The real world, I repeated incredulously. You think I do not know about the real world? I work 30 hours a week while taking a full course load and raising a child alone. I live on 5 hours of sleep and discount groceries. Do not lecture me about the real world. My voice had risen despite my best efforts, causing Noah to look over with concern. I forced a smile and took a deep breath. Look, I said, trying a different approach. Noah is your grandson. Do not you want to spend time with him, to be part of his life? Of course we do, my mother responded automatically. In appropriate ways and at mutually convenient times. Mutually convenient, I repeated. Like when exactly, in the 4 years since he was born, you have never once offered to watch him. Not once. My father cleared his throat. Allie, we made it very clear when you told us you were pregnant that we would not be providing child care. We raised our child. We are at a different stage of life now. A stage where golf takes priority over family, I said bitterly. That is unfair, my mother interjected. We have supported you financially. We helped with the security deposit on your apartment. We buy Noah presents for his birthday and Christmas. Money is not the same as time, Mom. Noah needs to know his grandparents. And he does know us, my father said defensively. We see him at family gatherings. The absurdity of his statement almost made me laugh. Family gatherings. You mean the 2 hours at Thanksgiving and Christmas where you barely interact with him. That is not a relationship. My mother's expression hardened. Allie, we have been more than generous, but we are not going to cancel our plans on 2 days' notice to babysit. We told you from the beginning, that childcare was your responsibility. I could feel tears of frustration building and blinked rapidly to hold them back. Noah was watching us now, his enjoyment of the fish forgotten as he sensed the tension in the room. "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "I just thought that maybe just this once you might put family first." "We are putting family first," my father replied. "We are teaching you valuable lessons about responsibility and planning." As if I needed lessons in responsibility from people who had never faced a day of real hardship in their lives. As if I had not been planning and preparing and sacrificing for years to create a better future for my son. "Noah," I called, forcing brightness into my voice. "Time to go, sweetheart. Mommy has work soon." Noah ran to me, wrapping his arms around my legs. "Can we stay longer? I want to show Grandpa my new truck toy." "Not today, buddy," I said gently. "Grandma and Grandpa are busy." My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Perhaps you could bring him by next weekend. We will be home on Sunday afternoon." "I will check our schedule," I replied coolly, gathering Noah's book and helping him put on his little backpack. As we headed toward the door, my father called after me. "Allie, if you are really in a bind, why not hire a sitter? There are plenty of services these days." I turned back, unable to hide my frustration. "With what money, Dad? After rent, daycare, groceries, and gas, I have about $50 of flexibility in my monthly budget. Professional sitters charge $15 to $20 an hour, and most have a 2-hour minimum. Not to mention the fact that I would be leaving my child with a complete stranger." "Well," my mother said with a shrug, "these are the kinds of challenges working mothers face. You chose this path." As if single motherhood had been my dream, as if I had not been abandoned by Noah's father, as if I was not doing everything humanly possible to build a stable future. "Goodbye," I said, simply taking Noah's hand and walking toward the door. "Thanks for your time." As we left the immaculate house with its pristine furniture and absence of children's laughter, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: anger at their callousness, hurt at their rejection, and a deep abiding sadness that my son would grow up with grandparents who saw him as an inconvenience rather than a joy. In the car, Noah asked innocently, "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming to our house?" "No, sweetie," I replied, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. "They have other plans." "Do they not like us?" He asked, his childish perception cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "They do like us," I assured him, though the words felt hollow. "They just show it differently than other grandparents." As we drove back to our small apartment, I wondered how I would possibly find a solution before Thursday morning. The future I had worked so hard for was hanging in the balance, and the people who should have cared the most had made it clear that their golf game took precedence. After leaving my parents' house, I drove Noah back to our apartment in silence, my mind racing with impossible scenarios and futile anger. Once home, I went through the motions of our evening routine, preparing Noah's favorite dinner of chicken nuggets and steamed broccoli, helping him with his bath, and reading 3 stories before tucking him into bed. Throughout it all, I maintained a facade of cheerfulness, determined not to let my son see the desperation that was consuming me. "Mommy loves you so much," I whispered, kissing his forehead as his eyelids grew heavy. "I love you more," he replied with our customary bedtime exchange, his voice already thick with approaching sleep. "I love you most." I finished carefully extracting myself from his bed and switching on his dinosaur nightlight. As soon as Noah's breathing deepened into sleep, the mask I had been wearing all evening crumbled. I sank onto the couch in our small living room and finally allowed the tears to come. They were not delicate, dignified tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that I muffled with a throw pillow to avoid waking Noah. Years of accumulated hurt, disappointment, and exhaustion poured out as I cried for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. My parents' rejection was not new, but it cut deeper this time because of what was at stake. This exam could determine whether I graduated this semester or had to take an additional course extending our financial hardship for months. It could affect whether I received the job offer from Riverside Accounting that I had been working toward a position that would finally provide financial stability for Noah and me. As my tears subsided, replaced by a dull headache and burning eyes, I found myself dwelling on memories from my childhood. Despite growing up in a beautiful home with every material advantage, emotional warmth had been scarce. My achievements were acknowledged with obligatory praise, but never celebrated with genuine enthusiasm. My setbacks were treated as learning opportunities rather than moments that warranted comfort. When I was 8, I had fallen off my bike and broken my wrist. My mother had taken me to the emergency room, efficiently filled my prescription without complaint, but never once held me or soothed my tears. "This is why we told you to be careful," she had said as we drove home. "Actions have consequences." When I won a regional math competition at 12, my father had nodded approvingly and said, "Good, now focus on maintaining those grades." There had been no celebratory dinner, no effusive pride, just the expectation that success was the minimum requirement. Looking back, I could see how that pattern of conditional love and emotional distance had shaped me, how it had perhaps made me vulnerable to Jacob's charm and false promises. Desperate for connection and affirmation, I had mistaken his initial interest for genuine caring, only to discover too late that he was as uncommitted and self-centered as my parents, just in different ways. The cycle was continuing with Noah. My parents viewed their grandchild as an obligation rather than a joy, a complication rather than a blessing. Their relationship with him was perfunctory, consisting of expensive gifts delivered with minimal personal interaction. Noah deserved better. He deserved grandparents who delighted in his presence, who created memories with him, who made him feel valued simply for existing. My phone buzzed, interrupting my dark thoughts. A text from my mother. Attached is an article about balancing parenting and academic responsibilities. Thought it might help with your situation. The casual cruelty of the gesture felt like salt in an open wound. Rather than offering actual assistance, she was sending me an article as if I had not been successfully balancing parenting and academics for 4 years already. As if an article could replace the family support that should have been freely given. I did not bother to open the link or respond to the message. Instead, I forced myself off the couch and spread my textbooks and notes across the small dining table. If I could not find childcare for Thursday, I needed to be as prepared as possible for a potential makeup exam, assuming Professor Davis would even allow one without a doctor's note. The clock read 9:45 p.m. I had just over 2 hours before I needed to be at work for the overnight inventory shift at the coffee shop, a monthly task that would keep me there until 4 a.m. I had class at 9 tomorrow, followed by daycare pickup, another shift at work, and then more studying. Sleep was a luxury I could not afford tonight. As I tried to focus on depreciation methods and asset valuation, my mind kept returning to Thursday morning and the impossible choice I faced. If I could not find someone to watch Noah, I would have to miss the exam. If I missed the exam, I might fail the course. If I failed the course, I would not graduate on time. If I did not graduate on time, I would lose the potential job offer. Each consequence cascaded into the next like a row of falling dominoes, all because my parents would not sacrifice 1 hour of their precious golf game. By 11:30 p.m., I had made little progress on my studying. My eyes were grainy from crying and lack of sleep, and the formulas and concepts that I had carefully memorized over weeks seemed to slide away from my comprehension. I gathered my materials into my backpack, checked on Noah one last time, and left the apartment, locking the door behind me. Mrs. Garcia from next door had agreed to listen for Noah while I worked my overnight shift. She was a kind, elderly woman who insisted she slept lightly and would hear if he cried out. I texted her that I was leaving and thanked her again for her vigilance. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived, my manager Keith already starting the inventory process. He glanced up as I entered, his expression changing to concern when he saw my face. "Rough night?" he asked sympathetically. "Rough everything," I replied, tying on my apron and forcing a smile. "But I am fine. Let us get this done so we can all go home." As I counted bags of coffee beans and boxes of paper cups, I tried to formulate a plan for Thursday. Could I bring Noah to the exam? Professor Davis was notoriously strict about classroom protocols, having once asked a student to leave for bringing a latte to class. A 4-year-old, no matter how well behaved, would never be permitted. Could I ask Professor Davis to take the exam at a different time? He had made it abundantly clear on the first day of class that makeup exams were only given for medical emergencies with documentation or for university-approved activities. "Childcare issues are not the university's concern," he had stated when a student had asked about accommodations. By the time my shift ended at 4 a.m., I was no closer to a solution and physically exhausted from the emotional stress and lack of sleep. I drove home in the pre-dawn darkness, my eyes burning and my thoughts growing increasingly desperate. When I arrived home, Mrs. Garcia was sitting in her doorway in a bathrobe waiting for me despite the early hour. Her kindness, in stark contrast to my parents' coldness, brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Noah sleep through the night?" I asked, fumbling with my keys. "Like an angel," she assured me with a gentle smile. "You look tired, mija. Is everything okay?" For a moment I considered confiding in her, but I could not bear to unload my problems onto this kind woman who already did so much for us. "Just busy with finals," I said instead. "Thank you again for listening out for Noah." "Anytime," she replied, patting my arm before returning to her apartment. Inside, I checked on Noah, who was still sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware of the crisis looming over us. I had just enough time to shower and change before he would wake up, beginning another day of the relentless routine that defined our lives. As the warm water washed over me, I allowed myself one final moment of despair. Then, squaring my shoulders, I resolved to do what I had always done, find a way forward, no matter how impossible it seemed. Noah was counting on me, and I would not let him down, even if it meant sacrificing the degree I had worked so hard to earn. Thursday morning arrived with the same relentless inevitability as any other day. I had barely slept, spending most of the night alternating between studying and staring at the ceiling, mentally cycling through increasingly unlikely solutions to my childcare dilemma. By the time my alarm went off at 5:30, I had resigned myself to the probability that I would miss the exam. I went through our morning routine, mechanically making Noah's breakfast, helping him brush his teeth, and selecting his clothes for the day. He seemed to sense my distress, despite my efforts to hide it. His usual morning chatter subdued as he watched me with concerned blue eyes. "Are you sad, Mommy?" he asked as I poured cereal into his favorite dinosaur bowl. "Just tired, buddy," I replied, forcing a smile. "Mommy has a big test today." "At your school?" he asked, spooning Cheerios into his mouth. "Yes, at my school. But there is a problem because your daycare is closed today, remember?" He nodded solemnly. "Because of the fire things." "That is right, the fire suppression system," I confirmed, impressed by his recall. "And Mommy needs to find someone to stay with you during her test." "Grandma and Grandpa?" he suggested innocently. The question pierced my heart. "No, sweetie. Grandma and Grandpa are busy today." "Playing golf," he said matter-of-factly, clearly remembering our conversation from earlier in the week. Yes, playing golf? I echoed, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. I can stay by myself, Noah offered, puffing out his little chest. I am a big boy. You are getting to be such a big boy, I agreed, smoothing his hair. But even big boys need grown-ups around just in case. As I cleaned up the breakfast dishes, I made a final, desperate decision. I would call Professor Davis, explain the situation truthfully, and throw myself on his mercy. Maybe, just maybe, he would allow me to take the exam during his office hours tomorrow. It was a long shot given his strict policies, but it was my only remaining option. I was reaching for my phone when a knock sounded at the door. Frowning, I checked the time, 8:15, wondering who could be visiting so early. Opening the door, I found my neighbor, Sarah Bennett, standing in the hallway. In her mid-60s, Sarah was a petite woman with silver gray hair cut in a practical bob and kind eyes behind sensible glasses. I knew her only from passing greetings in the hallway and occasional brief conversations at the mailboxes. Good morning, Allie, she said with a warm smile. I hope I am not disturbing you. Not at all, I replied, slightly confused by the unexpected visit. Is everything okay? She looked slightly embarrassed. I heard you crying last night. The walls in this building are not what they should be, I am afraid. I would have come over then, but I did not want to intrude. I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment. I am so sorry about that. I was just having a tough evening. No need to apologize, Sarah assured me. We all have those, but I wondered if there might be some way I could help. Sometimes just talking to someone can make a difference. Noah appeared at my side, curious about our visitor. Hello? He said politely, looking up at Sarah. Well, hello there, Sarah replied, her face lighting up. You must be Noah. Your mom has told me what a wonderful boy you are. Noah beamed at the compliment while I tried to recall when I had mentioned Noah to Sarah. Perhaps during one of our brief encounters by the mailboxes. Would you like to come in? I offered, suddenly aware that we were having this conversation in the hallway. Sarah stepped inside, glancing around our small apartment with appreciation rather than judgment. What a lovely home you have created here. Thank you, I said, gesturing for her to sit on the couch. Would you like some coffee? That would be lovely, she replied. As I prepared a cup for Sarah and refreshed my own, I found myself wondering if I should confide in her about my current predicament. There was something about her kind, straightforward manner that invited trust. Noah, I said, returning with the coffee. Why do not you show Sarah your dinosaur collection while I finish getting ready? Delighted with this suggestion, Noah retrieved his box of plastic dinosaurs from the shelf and began an enthusiastic presentation. Sarah responded with genuine interest, asking questions about each prehistoric creature and expressing appropriate awe at Noah's extensive knowledge. Watching them interact, an idea began to form in my mind so unlikely and yet so perfect that I was afraid to even consider it. But with time running out and no other options, I gathered my courage. Sarah, I said hesitantly during a pause in Noah's dinosaur tutorial. I hate to impose, but I am facing a bit of an emergency today. I have a final exam at 10 that accounts for 40% of my grade, but Noah's daycare is closed unexpectedly. I have tried everyone I know, including my parents, but no one can help. Sarah looked up from the triceratops she was examining. And you need someone to watch Noah during your exam? Yes, I admitted. It would only be for an hour, maybe an hour and a half at most. I would not ask, but I am really desperate. To my surprise, Sarah's face lit up. I would be delighted to help. I was a kindergarten teacher for 30 years before I retired. Children are my specialty. Relief washed over me so intensely that I had to sit down. Are you sure you do not even know us that well? I know enough, Sarah said firmly. "You are a dedicated mother and student, and Noah is a delightful child. Besides, my grandchildren live in California, and I only see them twice a year. I miss having little ones around." Noah looked up from his dinosaurs. "Are you going to be my babysitter?" he asked Sarah. "If that is all right with you," she replied seriously. "I make excellent chocolate chip cookies, and I know lots of dinosaur facts." Noah considered this information gravely before nodding his approval. "Okay. Can we make cookies while Mom is at her test?" "I think that could be arranged," Sarah said with a conspiratorial wink. "Sarah, I cannot tell you how much this means to me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This exam is so important for my graduation." "Say no more," she replied, waving away my thanks. "This is what neighbors do, or at least, what they should do. Now, what time do you need to leave?" We worked out the logistics quickly. I would bring Noah to Sarah's apartment at 9:30, giving me plenty of time to get to campus for the 10 o'clock exam. I offered to pay her, but she refused firmly. "Put that money toward your textbooks for next semester," she insisted. "Or better yet, treat yourself and Noah to ice cream to celebrate after your exam." As I gathered my notes and textbooks, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in days, I could focus on the exam rather than the seemingly insurmountable problem of childcare. "Thank you," I said again as Sarah prepared to return to her apartment to get ready for Noah's visit. "I truly do not know what I would have done without your help." "Sometimes help comes from unexpected places," she replied with a gentle smile. "That is one of life's little mysteries, is not it?" After Sarah left, I knelt down to look Noah in the eyes. "What do you think about staying with Ms. Sarah while Mommy takes her test?" "She seems nice," he said thoughtfully. "And she knows about Stegosaurus." "She certainly does," I agreed, relieved by his positive reaction. "And it is just for a short time. As soon as my test is done, I will come right back to get you." "And then ice cream?" he asked, hopefully, clearly having overheard that part of the conversation. "And then ice cream," I confirmed, hugging him tightly. As I prepared to leave for campus, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, profound gratitude for Sarah's kindness, lingering hurt and anger toward my parents, and nervous anticipation about the exam. But overwhelming all of these was a sense of validation. Despite the obstacles, despite the lack of support from those who should have cared the most, I had found a way forward. It struck me as I watched Noah carefully packing his dinosaur toys to bring to Sarah's apartment that sometimes family is not defined by blood, but by kindness, by showing up when it matters most. Sarah, practically a stranger until this morning, had demonstrated more genuine care for our well-being than my own parents had in years. At 9:25, we knocked on Sarah's door, Noah clutching his backpack of toys and books. She welcomed us warmly, her apartment filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the promise of cookie baking. "We are going to have a wonderful time," she assured Noah. "And your mom is going to ace her exam." "Thank you," I whispered as Noah explored his new surroundings. "Go," Sarah urged with a smile. "Focus on your test. We will be fine here." As I hurried to campus, I felt an unfamiliar lightness in my step. For the first time in days, I could concentrate fully on the challenge ahead without the burden of worry about Noah. It was a small taste of the support system I had always longed for, a glimpse of what might be possible when people chose kindness over obligation. The exam, with its complex problems and detailed analysis requirements, demanded every bit of my focus and knowledge. But rather than feeling overwhelmed, I worked through each question, methodically drawing on the weeks of preparation and late-night study sessions. When Professor Davis announced the 5-minute warning, I was just finishing my final review of the answers, confident that I had done my best. As I handed in my exam paper, Professor Davis nodded slightly, the closest thing to approval he ever demonstrated. "Good luck with the results, Ms. Wilson." "Thank you, sir," I replied, barely containing the urge to race out of the classroom and back to Noah. The return trip to our apartment building seemed to take forever, though in reality, it was less than 20 minutes. When I knocked on Sarah's door, it opened to reveal Noah with chocolate smeared on his cheeks and a wide grin. "Mommy, we made cookies, real ones with chips of chocolate." Behind him, Sarah stood in her kitchen, a plate of cookies cooling on the counter and a light dusting of flour on her blouse. "He was absolutely wonderful," she reported. "A natural baker and quite the conversationalist." Relief and gratitude washed over me as Noah excitedly showed me the cookies they had made, the pictures he had drawn, and demonstrated the new dinosaur facts Sarah had taught him. "I cannot thank you enough," I said to Sarah as we prepared to leave. "You quite literally saved my academic career today." "It was my pleasure, truly," she replied, sending us home with a plate of cookies. "Noah is welcome anytime. In fact, I was thinking, if you ever need a regular arrangement, perhaps one afternoon a week, or whenever you have late classes, I would be happy to help." Her offer, so generous and unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. "That would be amazing," I managed to say. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Sarah confirmed. "My apartment gets too quiet sometimes. A little dinosaur expertise would liven things up considerably." As Noah and I walked the short distance back to our apartment, his small hand in mine and the plate of cookies carefully balanced in my other hand, I felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with lingering anger toward my parents. The contrast between Sarah's generous spirit and their callous refusal could not have been more stark. But alongside that anger was a new realization: family could be chosen, as well as born. Sarah, with her kindness and genuine interest in Noah, had demonstrated more true family spirit in one morning than my parents had in years. Perhaps it was time to redefine what family meant for Noah and me, to create connections based on love and support rather than obligation and biology. That evening, as Noah and I shared cookies and milk before his bedtime, I made a decision. It was time to establish clear boundaries with my parents, not out of spite or anger, but out of respect for myself and protection for Noah. We deserved better than reluctant tolerance and conditional care. We deserved to be surrounded by people who valued us, who saw our presence in their lives as a gift rather than an inconvenience. With that resolution firm in my mind, I tucked Noah into bed, grateful for the unexpected blessing that had come from what had initially seemed like an insurmountable crisis. Sometimes I reflected as I watched my son drift off to sleep. The most profound connections come not from where we expect them, but from the kindness of strangers who choose to become family. 1 week after my final exam, Professor Davis posted the results online. My hands trembled slightly as I logged into the university portal, knowing how much depended on this grade. When the page loaded, I stared at the screen in disbelief. 94%. An A. Relief washed over me so intensely that I had to sit down, tears of joy replacing the tears of stress and frustration that had dominated the past week. This grade, combined with my previous coursework, meant I would graduate with honors at the end of the semester. The job offer from Riverside Accounting that had been contingent on my successful completion of the program was now secure. In just 2 months, I would transition from struggling student to accounting professional with a salary that would transform our lives. My first impulse was to call my parents and share the news to prove to them that I had succeeded despite their lack of support. But as my finger hovered over their contact in my phone, I paused. This moment of triumph deserved to be shared with people who had actually contributed to its achievement. people who would genuinely celebrate my success. Instead, I texted Sarah, who had continued to be a supportive presence in our lives, watching Noah twice more during my final week of classes. Aced my accounting final 94%. Noah and I are celebrating with ice cream this afternoon, if you would like to join us. Her reply came almost immediately. Wonderful news, so proud of you. Ice cream sounds perfect. My treat. As I put my phone away, I realized it was time for the conversation I had been rehearsing in my mind all week. Taking a deep breath, I dialed my parents' number and invited them to dinner at my apartment that evening. To my surprise, they accepted without hesitation, perhaps sensing the significance of the invitation. That afternoon, Noah, Sarah, and I celebrated with enormous ice cream sundaes at Sweet Dreams Parlor, laughing as Noah attempted to fit impossibly large spoonfuls into his mouth and ended up with chocolate syrup on his nose. You know, Sarah said as we walked back to our apartment building, Noah skipping ahead of us. I have been thinking about what you told me about your parents. I had shared the whole story with her over coffee one evening after Noah was asleep, the words pouring out in a cathartic release of long-held hurt and disappointment. What about them? I asked. Well, I was a parent too, she said thoughtfully. My children are grown now with families of their own, and I understand the desire for freedom after raising kids. But what your parents do not seem to realize is that being a grandparent is not an obligation. It is a privilege. They have never seen it that way, I replied with a sigh. Noah has always been viewed as my responsibility, my problem. That is their loss, Sarah said firmly. And a tremendous one. That little boy is a gift. Her words stayed with me as I prepared for my parents' visit, arranging a simple but nice dinner of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, Noah's current favorite meal. Sarah had helped earlier in the day, teaching me her secret for perfectly crispy chicken skin and lending me proper serving dishes to replace my mismatched collection. At precisely 6 o'clock, my parents arrived, my father bearing a bottle of wine and my mother carrying a small gift bag. Noah greeted them with his usual enthusiasm, which they acknowledged with their typical restraint. Something smells good, my father commented as they entered, his tone suggesting surprise. I made dinner, I replied simply. Noah helped with the potatoes. I mashed them, Noah announced proudly. With the smasher thing. Potato masher, I corrected gently. My mother glanced around the apartment, noting the clean surfaces and fresh flowers on the table, another gift from Sarah. The place looks nice, she offered. Thank you, I said, gesturing toward the living room. Please sit down. Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. As I put the finishing touches on the meal, I could hear Noah in the living room showing my parents his latest dinosaur drawings. Their responses were polite, but detached, lacking the genuine interest that Sarah had shown in the same artwork. During dinner, the conversation remained superficial, focusing on neutral topics like the unusually warm weather and the construction project downtown that was causing traffic delays. My parents complimented the food with evident surprise, as though they had expected me to serve frozen pizza or takeout. It was only after we had finished eating and Noah was occupied with a new coloring book, a gift from my mother, that I broached the subject that had brought us together. I got my final exam grade back today. I began, my voice calm despite my racing heart. 94%. I will be graduating with honors next month. That is wonderful, Allie, my father said, his tone genuinely pleased. We always knew you were capable. Congratulations, my mother added. You have worked very hard. Yes, I have, I agreed, despite numerous obstacles. A brief silence followed as they sensed the shift in the conversation. I wanted to talk to you both about last week, I continued. About the exam and my request for help with Noah. My father's expression tightened slightly. Allie, we have already discussed this. We had prior commitments. Yes, golf and lunch, I acknowledged. I remember. What you might be interested to know is that after you refused to help, my neighbor Sarah stepped in. She watched Noah during my exam, even though she had only just met him that morning. My mother frowned. You left Noah with a stranger? She was not a stranger for long, I replied evenly. She is a retired kindergarten teacher who lives down the hall. They baked cookies together and now Noah adores her. She has been more of a grandmother to him in 1 week than either of you have been in 4 years. That is unfair, my father protested. We have always been clear about our boundaries. Yes, you have, I agreed. Crystal clear. Your golf game takes priority over my education and Noah's well-being. Your lunch with the Hendersons is more important than helping your daughter graduate college. Now wait just a minute, my father began, his voice rising. No, Dad, you wait. I interrupted, my tone firm but not angry. I did not invite you here to fight or to make you feel guilty. I invited you here to establish new boundaries of my own. My parents exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my assertiveness. What do you mean, new boundaries? My mother asked cautiously. I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. I mean that I am no longer expecting or requesting your help with Noah. I have found support elsewhere from people who genuinely care about us and want to be part of our lives. What I do expect, however, is respect. We have always respected you, Allie, my father protested. No, you have not, I countered. You have judged me, lectured me, and made me feel like a failure for becoming a single mother. You have treated my son as a burden rather than a blessing. That stops now. My mother's expression wavered between defensiveness and surprise. I do not think that is fair. We love Noah. Maybe you do, I acknowledged. But love is not just a feeling, it is an action. It is showing up when someone needs you. It is prioritizing relationships over hobbies. It is making people feel valued, not inconvenient. I glanced over at Noah, happily coloring and oblivious to the tension in the room. The thing is, being a grandparent is not an obligation. It is a privilege, and it is one that you have consistently chosen not to embrace. That is your right. But it is also my right to protect Noah from feeling unwanted or less important than a golf game. What exactly are you saying, Allie? My father asked, his voice unnaturally controlled. I am saying that I am no longer going to chase your approval or beg for your involvement in our lives. I am saying that Noah deserves to be surrounded by people who are genuinely happy to see him, who make time for him, who consider him a joy rather than an obligation. I paused, gathering my courage for what needed to be said next. I am also saying that if you want to be part of our lives in a meaningful way, the door is open, but you will need to walk through it yourselves. That means initiating visits, showing genuine interest, and yes, occasionally rearranging your precious schedule to accommodate your grandson. If you cannot or will not do that, then we will continue to build our family with people who will. A heavy silence followed my words. My mother looked down at her hands, while my father's expression cycled through anger, defensiveness, and finally, a reluctant contemplation. You make us sound like monsters, my mother said quietly. We have always provided for you, even after you became pregnant. I am grateful for the financial support, I acknowledged. But money is not the same as presence. Noah needs grandparents who show up, who build memories with him, who make him feel special and loved. If that is not something you want to do, I understand. But I will not continue to expose him to the disappointment of having grandparents who view him as an inconvenience. My father cleared his throat. This is a lot to process, Allie. You seem to have formed some very strong opinions about us. They are not opinions formed overnight, I replied. They are conclusions reached after years of experiencing the same patterns. All I am asking is that you consider whether the relationship you currently have with Noah is the one you want to have as he grows up. Because he is growing up very quickly, and these early years will not come again. The conversation that followed was not easy. There were defensive moments, painful acknowledgments, and even a few tears from my mother when I described how Noah had asked if his grandparents did not like us after their refusal to help with my exam. But throughout it all, I maintained my composure and my resolve. This was not about punishing my parents or forcing them to admit they were wrong. It was about establishing healthy boundaries and creating the family environment that Noah deserved. By the end of the evening, no grand promises had been made, but something had shifted. My father, in a moment of rare vulnerability, admitted that he had never known how to relate to small children, having been raised in a household where children were seen but not heard. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "I have been repeating patterns without considering whether they were worth repeating." My mother, for her part, asked tentatively if she could take Noah to the Children's Museum that weekend. "He mentioned wanting to see the dinosaur exhibit when we were here last," she explained. "I thought perhaps just the two of us could go, if that would be all right with you." It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. As they prepared to leave, my father shook my hand formally, a gesture that would have seemed odd in most families, but represented real acknowledgement in ours. "You have become quite the young woman, Allie," he said, his tone conveying respect rather than the condescension I was accustomed to. "Determined, articulate, principled. Those are admirable qualities." "Thank you, Dad," I replied, genuinely touched by the rare compliment. After they left, I sat on the couch, emotionally drained, but also curiously light, as though a weight I had carried for years had begun to lift. I had no illusions that one conversation would transform my parents into the warm, involved grandparents that Noah deserved. Change, if it came at all, would be gradual and imperfect. But for the first time, I had advocated for myself and my son without apology or shame, setting boundaries based not on anger, but on self-respect and love. As I checked on Noah, already asleep with his dinosaur toy clutched tightly in one hand, I reflected on the unexpected turns of the past week. What had begun as a crisis, a desperate need for childcare during a critical exam, had evolved into something much more significant, a reevaluation of what family truly meant, and the courage to demand better for both Noah and myself. Perhaps I thought, as I gently kissed his forehead, the most important lesson was not about accounting principles or financial statements, but about the value of creating boundaries that protected what mattered most. And sometimes, finding your voice was just the beginning of building the life and the family you truly deserved. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning in May, I stood in line with hundreds of other graduates, the weight of my cap and gown reminding me of the significance of the day. From my position, I could see the audience seats where Noah sat in the front row, fidgeting in his little button-up shirt and tie. Beside him sat Sarah, elegant in a floral dress, her silver hair styled for the occasion. And to my genuine surprise, my parents were there as well. My father in a suit, and my mother in a cream-colored dress, both looking somewhat out of place, but undeniably present. The journey to this moment had been far from straight or simple. After our dinner conversation, my parents had made halting, sometimes awkward attempts to be more involved in Noah's life. My mother had indeed taken him to the dinosaur exhibit as promised, returning with photos of a beaming Noah posing next to a Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. My father had invited us to Sunday brunch twice, making a visible effort to engage Noah in conversation about his interests, though still with the slight discomfort of someone speaking a language they had not fully mastered. There had been setbacks along the way. A promised visit canceled due to a friend's surprise party. A phone call to Noah that lasted barely 2 minutes before my father remembered a meeting he needed to prepare for. Old habits did not disappear overnight, and there were moments when I questioned whether real change was possible. But there had also been surprising moments of connection. My mother arriving unannounced one afternoon with a children's cookbook and ingredients to make dinosaur-shaped cookies with Noah. My father awkwardly but sincerely asking if he could attend Noah's preschool graduation ceremony. Small gestures that suggested they were at least trying to cross the bridge I had built toward a different kind of relationship. Meanwhile, Sarah had become an integral part of our lives, a chosen grandmother who delighted in Noah's company and provided the unconditional love and support that every child deserves. She watched him 2 afternoons a week while I completed my final semester and helped with my job search. Her experience as an educator, proving invaluable as she edited my resume and coached me through interview preparations. When Riverside Accounting offered me a full-time position with benefits and a starting salary that would transform our financial situation, Sarah was the first person I called. Now, as the graduates began to process into the auditorium, I caught Noah's eye and waved. He bounced excitedly in his seat, waving back with such enthusiasm that his program went flying, causing Sarah to laugh and my mother to reach over to retrieve it. The sight of them sitting together, united in support of Noah and me, created a lump in my throat that was difficult to swallow around. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of speeches and names. When they called Allison Marie Wilson Bachelor of Science in Accounting cum laude, I walked across the stage with my head high, accepting my diploma with a firm handshake and a smile that felt like it might split my face. From the audience came an enthusiastic, "Yay, Mommy!" that made the entire section laugh appreciatively. After the ceremony, I found my small support group waiting by the fountain in the courtyard. Noah ran to me immediately, wrapping his arms around my legs with his customary enthusiasm. "You did it, Mommy! You got your diploma just like in the Berenstain Bears book." I laughed, lifting him into a hug, despite the unwieldiness of my graduation gown. "I sure did, buddy. And you were the best audience member ever." Sarah approached next, her eyes suspiciously bright as she embraced me. "I am so proud of you, dear," she whispered. "So very proud." My parents hung back slightly uncertain of their place in this moment of celebration. I beckoned them forward, determined to include them in the joy of the day. "Congratulations, Allie," my father said, formally extending his hand. I took it, but then pulled him into a brief hug, feeling his initial stiffness give way to a tentative pat on my back. My mother hugged me more readily, her perfume familiar and nostalgic. "We brought something for you," she said, nodding to my father, who produced a small envelope from his jacket pocket. Inside was a check for a substantial amount, accompanied by a note that read, "For the security deposit on a new place. Time for you and Noah to have more space." I looked up, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Thank you, both of you. This is incredibly generous." "Well," my father said, clearing his throat, "we thought about what you said, about showing up, about actions speaking louder than words. We wanted to do something meaningful." "And we are sorry," my mother added quietly, a rare admission from her. "Sorry that we were not there for you when you needed us most." The apology, simple as it was, represented a significant shift. My parents had never been ones to acknowledge mistakes or express regret. That they were doing so now in this public setting spoke volumes about their desire to change. "I appreciate that," I said sincerely. "And I appreciate you being here today." Noah, who had been listening to this exchange, suddenly declared, "I am hungry. Graduation makes me hungry." We all laughed, the tension broken by his 4-year-old directness. "Well, we cannot have that," Sarah said, ruffling his hair. "I believe your mom mentioned something about a celebration lunch." Together, this unconventional family group made our way to a nearby restaurant where I had reserved a table. As we walked, Noah skipped between his grandparents and Sarah chattering excitedly about the ceremony and asking if I would wear my graduation hat to bed that night. Over lunch, my father surprised me by raising his glass in a toast. "To Allie," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of pride, "who has shown us all what determination and courage look like, and to Noah, who has the best mother any child could ask for." Tears pricked my eyes as I raised my own glass, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 months ago, I had been at my lowest point, abandoned by those who should have supported me, most desperate for just 1 hour of help. Today, I was a college graduate with a promising career ahead, surrounded by people who in different ways and to different degrees had chosen to be part of our lives. In the days that followed graduation, change continued to unfold. With my parents' gift and my own savings, Noah and I moved to a townhouse closer to my new job, with a small backyard where he could play, and a second bedroom that did not double as a living room. Sarah, to my delight, decided to move to an apartment in the same complex, not wanting to lose the close connection she had formed with us. My parents, true to their tentative efforts at greater involvement, began a tradition of Sunday dinners, alternating between their home and mine. These gatherings were not always comfortable, sometimes still marked by the awkwardness of people learning a new way to relate to each other. But there were also moments of genuine warmth, like when my father taught Noah how to play checkers, or when my mother, discovering Noah's interest in baking, brought over her mother's recipe box and spent an afternoon making cinnamon rolls with him. As summer turned to fall, I settled into my new role at Riverside Accounting, grateful for the regular hours, the professional challenges, and most of all, the financial stability that allowed me to provide for Noah without constant anxiety. He began kindergarten thriving in the structured environment and making friends easily with his outgoing nature. Our life was not perfect. There were still difficult days, moments of exhaustion and overwhelm. The relationship with my parents continued to have its ups and downs, progress rarely moving in a straight line. But the fundamental difference was that I no longer faced these challenges alone. I had built a support system, a chosen family that included both blood relations, willing to change, and dear friends who had become family through love and choice. One evening, as Noah and I walked home from the community playground, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mommy, are Grandma and Grandpa different now?" I considered how to answer, wanting to be truthful without burdening him with adult complexities. "Yes, buddy, they are trying to be different. They are learning how to be better grandparents because they love you." He nodded seriously, processing this information with the straightforward acceptance of children. "I like when they come to our house, and I like when Ms. Sarah comes too. She makes the best cookies." "She certainly does," I agreed, smiling at his simple prioritization of cookie baking skills. "We have a good family, do not we, Mommy?" he asked, swinging our joined hands. His question brought tears to my eyes, happy ones this time. "Yes, Noah, we do have a good family. It might not look like everyone else's family, but it is perfect for us." As I tucked him into bed that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. What had begun as a crisis, a desperate need for childcare during a critical exam, had become the catalyst for profound change in our lives. My parents' refusal to help, painful as it had been, had forced me to seek support elsewhere, to establish healthy boundaries, and ultimately, to create a more authentic family structure for Noah and myself. I had learned that sometimes the most valuable boundaries are not walls that keep people out, but gates that establish the terms of entry. That family is defined not by obligation, but by choice, by showing up consistently with love and support. That healing is possible even in the most damaged relationships when both sides are willing to make the effort. Most importantly, I had discovered my own strength. The young woman who had once accepted emotional neglect as her due had found her voice advocating not just for herself, but for her son's right to be valued and cherished. In standing up to my parents and refusing to accept less than we deserved, I had modeled for Noah the self-respect and courage I hoped he would carry throughout his life. As I watched his peaceful, sleeping face, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected blessings that had emerged from that moment of crisis. The neighbor who had become family, the parents who were slowly learning a new way to love, the inner strength that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Sometimes the doors that close in our lives are not endings, but opportunities to build new doors, wider ones that let in more love and light. Have you ever experienced a moment of rejection that ultimately led to something better? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that families come in all shapes and sizes, built not just by blood, but by love choice, and sometimes by the kindness of unexpected allies. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to create the boundaries that protect your heart and the connections that nourish your soul.